Hello and welcome to the 2010 TM Master Cup Series Season Preview. Dan Mullen here alongside with Lance Andrews. Hello there, and konnichiwa. I think that's how you can best say it. Right, because we are currently in Japan for the season opener at the Twin Ring Motegi. We're not trackside, we're not at the track yet, but we will be there. And Lance, the fact that the season opener is not in America has angered some people, and that's going to be the source of the big news. Well, the first American round is on round 4, but in the championship. But Garth McAllister has said, and well, you can take this with a grain of salt here, that the TM Master Cup Series needs to go back to the South, and what he means there is the South of the United States. And I think it's a little bit extreme there from Garth McAllister, which, if you've known Garth McAllister as long as I have, that would not surprise you at all. And he wants to bring back the Texas 500, and I'm not too familiar on the history of the Texas 500, I must admit. The Texas 500 was the marquee race of the American Stock Car Championship, which ran from 1961 until 1979, when the Master Cup Series bought them out. It was formed sort of as a rival to the Master Cup Series, and was basically based in the South, and they ran largely on tracks a mile and longer, whereas the Master Cup Series would usually run on shorter ovals and road courses, and the occasional super speedway here and there. And then, of course, when the ASCC toppled under basically its own weight in 1979, the Master Cup Series bought them out and took over most of their race dates. And as a result, I think, ironically, the ASCC guys have pretty much dominated the Master Cup Series ranks ever since. And I'm not sure that's the best thing for the sport, to have, one part of the United States dominate the entire driver pool, but that's how it was. And here we are now, and apparently they're going to come. The ASCC is coming back from the dead, because Garth McAllister has said he wants to revive the Texas 500, and well, he's trying to do it to bring the old school racing back to the fans. He said that he would make the cars look like they did about 15-20 years ago, which would mean you'd get cars looking like they did in about 1992 running around. Well, he held a poll, I think, among the fans on his website about what year, about the greatest year for Master Cup Series racing, and apparently the fans voted 1992, and I'm not sure why. I mean, there's not much about the 92 cars that are really, that was so great about them, other than the fact that they were affordable. But that's another story altogether. Apparently 92 won the poll, the vote. I think the options were between 1990 and 1998, and the 92 won. So apparently they're going to have a 1992 spec Master Cup Series cars running around running around a track in Texas. And, well, the ASCC was known for a lot of very rowdy things in the infield, and a lot of things like that. They were pretty notorious for discouraging women and minority drivers, or even from women and minority involvement in general. So, a lot of people question what this will mean. And also, the ASCC, I should probably note this, the ASCC banned foreign marques from competing unless they're owned at least 3/4 by Americans, or were at least 75% American, which means Colton Morell will not be able to participate. But John Colton, I think, has already said that he has no interest of participating anyway. So this is it'll be interesting to see if this actually happens, and if it does, what will and how it will go. We've already been told, Dan, that if it does happen, we're going to be going there, and that'll be around the 4th of July weekend. So that'll be interesting. Haven't had a 4th of July race in quite a long time, so that will be. We'll have to see what comes of that. And I think some people have questioned whether or not McAllister's threat is serious, and I think people that said it is serious, I think it is a serious threat, because he has basically sold off the McAllister Motorsports racing team right after they launched, too. It's a bit of a bizarre thing to do, but, well, I guess if you're trying to recreate, the ASCC, this makes sense, that he sold it to Majestic Motorsports, which currently runs the number 12 Team Lights car. Majestic Motorsports is based in France, and their current Team Lights car is going to be the only car on the grid that's not going to be built in America. However, they're going to be basically taking over the McAllister Motorsports shop and keeping most of the management there, so apparently they know what they're doing. And not only that, but Majestic Motorsports, Dan, I've heard this name a long time ago, because they were very, very prominent in French touring cars, and in GTs, and all sorts of forms of racing with tin tops, in the 90s and in the early 2000s. So it's apparently a sort of a somewhat big European racing team, sort of, expanding. Well, they have been in British touring cars for a little while, and they didn't do too bad. And they were also in French and German touring cars and some GTs, as was already mentioned. And they didn't do too well at Le Mans last year, which was their first run at Le Mans for, I think, 4 years. But they're going to be coming to the Master Cup Series, and I think that's a good thing, because it's going to be a French team with a French car, the Gasnier, French tyres, and Michelin. So I think this deal's actually been in the works, Dan, for a long time, which I think is partially why McAllister acquired the Gasnier chassis. So, with Majestic now coming in, McAllister is leaving, and, well, we should probably go into some of the other news items about people that are leaving. One of them, someone that's not really leaving, Lauren Roth, unfortunately. And why is that? Because he was involved in a massive testing crash at Mexico City, the Autodrome of Mexico, whatever DF stands for, on District Federal or something like that. Well, it basically means the same thing as, I think, DC or something like that, but you get the idea. Right? Yeah. At Mexico DF, the Autodrome of Mexico DF, also called basically the Mexico City Raceway, Autodrome Mexico Raceway, Autodrome of Mexico City, or however that would be. Pardon me for my horrendously bad Spanish, and pardon Lance for his complete ignorance on the topic. Right. Now, thank you for embarrassing me on the radio. No problem. It's part of my job. Really? Yeah. Have a look in the job description. It says humiliate Lance Andrews every so often. Anyway, this is actually some rather tragic news, and of course we're sort of lightening the mood here, because Lauren Roth had a pretty big crash, and when the front brake discs appeared to explode, and he went headfirst into the turn 1 wall, which is it's a fair way away from the road, but he hit part of the sand, I think, and went just careening into it, and it was a massive incident. Lauren Roth, fortunately, he's still with us, so if you're listening, Lauren, get well soon. And the team boss of Ocean Team STS, Greg Munson, has said that Lauren Roth will probably be out for the entire season before it even starts, it would seem, and that Leon Kenniston would jump into the 39 car. Kenniston's been their 4th driver, but I think Roth, it really does seem rather tragic, because Roth did have a very good year last year. Very good year last year. Won Daytona, was in contention to win a couple more, and just didn't quite have the luck, I think, to do better than he did. And the STS, of course, they won out of the box. I mean, they did very well with not only Roth, but with Brian Sendak. They had several good runs at Sendak, but of course, Brian Sendak's season was pretty much scratched before it even started, because he missed the first few races. Poor Brian, well, he's going over to Saw USA, so I don't think you'll get a better call than that. Well, we'll have to see. But Roth, of course, we don't know his exact injuries, but we do think that we did hear some rumors that it was a closed head injury of some sorts, something like that. But again, that can't be verified. They're keeping rather tight lips around the whole around what the exact details of his injuries are. And they said it was life-threatening, but they said he will most likely recover from it, but it will just take time. Which I think indicates there was probably more rib injuries than that, because Liz Hebert had a very similar incident to Roth's just in early November, right before Decatur, in the same car, actually, in the 2010 STS. So I think this means that STS is going to have a lot of problems. Now, speaking of STS, of course, Leon Kennison will jump into the 39 car. Stephanie McGlynn will jump into the car number 37. Last kept secret of the off-season. Stephanie McGlynn going to STS. Terrible, terrible secret there. But it does seem, though, that they are having some problems with that car right now, and especially when it comes to the brake discs, because they, of course, when you have brake discs that overheat and explode like that, you're just asking for trouble. And of course, Stan Rosenstrater will go up to full time. Will go up to full time in the 38 car. Well, Rosenstrater had a couple of really good races, but he also had a lot of really anonymous ones, or just plain bad ones. So I really don't know how Rosie is going to go. Yeah, we're going to see, of course, Rosie is the nickname that was given to Stan Rosenstrater on the, when he won the Team Lights Championship in 2008. And we're going to go through all the teams now. In fact, let's start with STS. McGlynn, Rosenstrater, Keniston. And Magnussen for the fourth driver. Well, we've already gone through all the details about the car, but the driving lineup, well, we went through Rosenstrater. Keniston's not a bad driver, but he just needs to sort of pick it up a little bit. He does need to up his game a bit, but on the short tracks, I don't think you'll find anyone better than him. And on the one dirt track race this year, Leon Kennison on the dirt track race is going to be something awesome, I'm going to tell you. And Stephanie McGlynn, and, well, basically if she keeps it off the wall, I think she'll do quite well. She did well last year, and she didn't crash very often. Well, now let's go to the team that STS owns. Corsa, Squadra Corsa. We're going to see the Italian supercar, the blue of Corsa, coming to the Master Cup Series, and I can already see you grinning over there, Lance. Why? Because this is probably one of the most anticipated new arrivals in quite some time, at least if you're me. And that's because they've got Enzo Medina, who is, well, Enzo Medina is just, he's not really Master Cup Series material, but I think he's there because he's Italian, and they couldn't find anyone else better for the ride. Alonso Tosia is a very good driver. He probably could have won Decatur, and he might have been in a shot with a couple top fives. But Danny Savin was really catching up to Tosia towards the end of Decatur, and Tosia was really pushing it on fuel. So you may suspect that Tosia might have had a heartbreaker anyway, that he might have had to either dive into the pits or he would have been passed in the last lap by Savin. But either way, he was sort of deprived of a very good result. And of course, Stuart Sandoval is team leader, and I don't think you can really get a better team leader than Sandoval at the moment if you're a smaller team. And that's because Sandoval, he's one of STS's guys, and Sandoval, he's matured finally into being a good enough to be a team leader, and mature enough personally, with the fourth driver being Milano Rossini, who's going to be running the TM Junior Series Championship this year. So the overall for Corsa, well, I don't know. They're probably not going to be as good as the STS is, but the design of the car looks pretty good. So they could be something to fear on the road courses, but other than that, I really don't know. Now let's go to the Team EFR. Now this is a team that's a little bit disjointed. Well, they'll probably get 1, 2, 3 on the grid on every super speedway we run. Well, you have Anthony Evans, Scott Bates, and Ian Cooper. 3 very good drivers on the super speedways, and from all accounts, it's a pretty good super speedway car. Of course, Evans won Talladega in 2007. Scott Bates, he won Canada 2 years in a row, and Ian Cooper hasn't won anything since 2006, but he is very good on those super speedways. He does seem to have a knack for them. So how do you think they're going to go? Well, also, Dan, you missed one point here. This is the only team that's actively using 2 different tire brands. You have Anthony Evans and Scott Bates both on Goodyears, but when you have Ian Cooper, what tires do you think he's going to be on? Cooper's? Absolutely. Apparently he's got a personal contract, and the EFR guys just basically shrugged their shoulders and said, well, we'll run them both. So I think there could be a very interesting intra-team battle there between Evans and Bates, and of course Cooper, to see, maybe that the EFR car is suited to one tire over another, if that actually is the case. But of course the tires in this series are so equal, I really don't think there's going to be much of a difference there. And also the fact that there's also another interest point. Yes, Anthony Evans and Scott Bates' cars reportedly are sponsored by 2 football teams from American football teams. the college level teams from Scott Bates, the Oklahoma team for Scott Bates, and the Texas team for Anthony Evans. You can tell I don't follow football very well because my knowledge of that is very, very limited. And Lance, of course, you prefer to call American football as things we can't say here, but aerial ping pong. But basically, you're going to see an intra-team battle there between Evans and Bates. Oklahoma versus Texas. So there's going to be a lot of interesting intra-team action there. These three guys have a lot of respect for each other, and I think they could be a pretty dynamic mix. And we're going to go down to the next team on the list, which is, of course, Majestic Motorsports, which is now taking over McAllister. And, they got new management, so let's see how everything works. Well, new owners, rather. They have new owners. Of course, one of them being Esme Rousseau, former Master Cup driver in her own right, but mostly known as a French GT driver. No major successes for Rousseau, but fairly good business sense. So Rousseau is involved in this effort. That's really the only name that Master Cup Series people are going to know. The Duclairs are involved, I believe, so we're going to see how that works. Of course, the Duclair family very involved in motorsport in France. So we're going to see how this team's going to pan out. I think they could be all right if they get all their management lined up. Most of the mechanics and all are the same, but there's some new people all running the show. The driving lineup, it could be a little better. You have Matt Taylor, Dale Roswell, and Carlos Donzello in the 3 full-time cars. Matt Taylor, I think he's maybe a little past his time and may just have had that meteoric rise and meteoric fall, but in 2009 he actually did quite well in the few races he ran, so he's still eligible for the provisional, and of course Taylor will be locked into the field. Roswell will. No, Roswell is, that's right, because it's highest in points first. And so Roswell I think could do a little better than Taylor because he's had a lot more testing in this car than Taylor has. But then again, Dale Roswell's 60. He's going to be 64 this year. He might be thinking about retirement, but who knows? Dale Roswell, he was talking retirement 10 years ago, and he didn't retire. So if he's still competitive, you can't really blame him for going on. And Carlos Donzello, of course, Lance, what do you think about him? Well, Carlos Donzello had the beginning half of last year he was very, very good, and I was very impressed with him. But once the media in Brazil, I think, got wind of his successes, I think they just put a little too much pressure on him, and he cracked under that pressure just a little bit. He had a couple of incidents that were a little ridiculous, and it really did seem as if he just needed a breather, and just needed some more confidence. And now I think he has that confidence, and we'll have to see what Carlos is able to do. He has a very nice looking car, I might add. And the fourth driver, Packer Carroll. Well, Packer Carroll, I don't think Packer Carroll is going to be he's going to be a big star one day. I can tell you that right now. He's just going to have to get used to the car. He probably won't do as well as his teammates, but we'll just have to see, won't we? Of course, Packer Carroll, Arla driver, now going into the team TM Junior cars, and he's got a fairly good team, and we'll have to see how he goes. And next, we're going to go off to one of the new manufacturers that's coming in, Tremwell, with Camelot Racing. And they're 4 drivers. On the full-time lineup, Gary Edwards, Chris Johans, and Scott Stoidler, with Damian Snyder as the 4th driver. Solid lineup, you have to say. A very solid lineup. It also could be... the car, though, I'm a little bit surprised at. It looks a lot like the Tyrant from last year. If you look at the sides of the car, aside from the little sort of muscle car-like side doors on it, the rest of it just looks like the Tyrant from last year. And the Tyrant from 2009, Dan, was actually a very good car. But one wonders whether or not that the Tremwells really got that kind of muscle to keep up with the rest of the field. They do have the SAR engine, which I think could help them. If there's any one of the new manufacturers that's going to win next year, Tremwell is going to be it. And if there's any new manufacturer that's going to have multiple wins, it's going to be Tremwell, because they look very, very good. And you have a few drivers there that, of course, looking for wins or more wins. Chris Johans hasn't won a race yet, and I think he in particular is going to be hungry for a race win finally. Wouldn't surprise me if he gets it very quickly either. In fact, I think the Tremwell could be the car to beat him in Japan, because the Eagle might not be totally up to scrap yet, but we'll have to see. Scott Stoidler won in Australia. Looks like he can do it again. Of course, Gary Edwards is usually very competitive anyway. And Damian Snyder, well, in the races Snyder runs, I think he could be very good, but then again, he could also be a little bit of a problem for the other drivers following. Okay, let's move on now to the team that really we've heard the least about. Power Steering Incorporated. This is another one of the new cars. Kurt Pliskin Kurt Pliskin is of course the lead driver here. Zelda Ashby was just recently announced as driving for this team, and Marcus Leonard are the full-time drivers. Talk about team personality. Well, talk about personality when you look at the car. It's got a big shock design on it. I love this car. It's my favorite Master Cup Series car ever, because it's got this ridiculous-looking shock design thing on the front with the, grill teeth thing, and the headlights look like eyes. James Dalton and William Power put this car together, and it looks fantastic. Of course, we'll have to see how it does on track, though. No one really knows. Apparently all their tests have been private, so no one really knows how good the car is. And they were testing it side by side, I think, with the Inglesby from last year. So we're gonna have to see how this team goes. How about the driving lineup? Pliskin's good. I'm not denying that. For a guy who had who lost an eye, he certainly knows what he's doing behind the wheel of a race car. And Zelda Ashby is a little bit of a hit or miss driver, and Marcus Leonard even more so. Of course, you do have the only driver in that lineup, a full-time lineup without a win, is Leonard. But I don't think he seems to be feeling the pressure to win anything, because he was having a lot of fun in the just doing donuts all the time. He was doing donuts in the parking lot of his hotel in that car, so they're apparently having a lot of fun, and I think that PSI could bring a lot of excitement to the grid in 2010. Next team we're going to talk about is the VRT, the Vulpi Racing Team. This car, the VCO2, what do you think of it? And we'll get to the car first, before we get to the drivers. The car looks exactly the same as last year, Dan, and that's, I think, the problem here, is that the VCO2 is a little bit, I don't know, but keep in mind that the Vulpi SR560 at the end of last year was actually a very good car, because Alexis Rainsford and Zach Duff had been able to develop that car very well. And I think that when you have both Rainsford and Duff on the same team again, you're going to have a very good combination, especially when you have, as the other full-time driver, Franz Redlich. I think we can expect Rainsford in the points talent to absolutely blow Redlich and Duff out of the weeds, but I think that's basically on the measure of talent, because Cyril Vulpi, the new team owner over there, has basically said that he has no interest in team orders. He finds it absolutely repulsive, and he said no driver is going to have the advantage over another driver, regardless of what point in the season we're in. I think that that's a good attitude to have, but I also think that might kill some championship hopes, because when it comes down to a championship, you want to put your eggs into a certain basket. You say, okay, well, Rainsford's going for a title. Let's put and Redlich and Duff are way back in 21st and 23rd or something. That's probably a bit low, but let's say they're there anyway. And we should probably focus more on helping Rainsford win the championship than helping Redlich and Duff sort of fight for 20th. I think that attitude might blow up in their face, because Cyril Vulpi won't do that. He won't give Rainsford preferential treatment if it turns out she is fighting for a championship. I think he's one of the few owners that would do that, Dan, and I'm a little worried. And what about other drivers? Franz Redlich has already been in the Master Cup Series ranks, and he was solid in his 1 year with Aerotech. Alexis Rainsford, we all know how good of a driver she really is, but with rumors she's going to Formula A as early as 2011, She might not be completely focused, and Zach Duff, he's going to be looking to, well, just sort of break out of Rainsford's shadow a little bit. And the fourth drivers. Luca Scalora, we don't know much about. He's an Italian GT driver, I believe. And that's really about it. John Parker Jr. won. He won at New York last year, but other than that, he really didn't impress too much. So we're going to have to see what's up for JP Jr. and Luca. Now we're going to move to Hajes Racing, and this is a team this team's already has some internal issues here because their new driver, Adrian Devereaux, from the ROL, has already come out and said that he is going to do better than his teammates. Right, I'll believe it when I see it. Adrian Devereaux, not exactly the most modest driver in the garage, but or the paddock, as us international people call it, as us, foreign people call it. Go on. Alan Hajes, we all know what he can do behind the wheel. Alan Hajes will play it safe if he has to, and the other four. Oh my goodness, tongue twister. The other full-time driver is Danny Southern, and Danny will absolutely drive the wheels off the car if he's in the mood. If the new Colt Morel Corsair is not a good car, Danny Southern's not going to try. He's not going to try his hardest. Alan Hajes will play it safe. He'll probably get the best points finish out of a car. Adrian Devereaux, I'm really not sure yet. He's had a bit of a reputation for tearing other people's cars up, and so I don't think he's going to be making too many friends. And especially when he's already come out and said that he's going to do better than Hajes and Sullivan in his rookie year. I think that's outrageous. Of course, Devereaux, one of the two new French drivers in the Master Cup Series grid, and their fourth driver is Gaspar de Souza, the Portuguese driver who turned a lot of heads at Decatur and turned himself into the wall in lap 2. But that's beside the point. Up until the actual Decatur race, he was very impressive. Yes, Gaspar de Souza. He could be very, very strong in the few races he runs, but we'll have to see. He's going to play it safe. De Souza is. I know from the way I've seen him drive, he's going to play it very safe. He's going to try to make sure he finishes the race, and then he's going to worry about winning it. We'll have to see how it goes. Flair Motorsports. Now, this is a team that I think is played it very conservative with the car. The Leonard Q9 has really not changed at all. Their driving lineup is also a little bit on the conservative side. They have David Krikorian, Rachel Rainsford, and Jacques Bouvier. Now, Bouvier is really the only anomaly there, because Bouvier, of course, dominated the TM Life Series last year. No question about it. He smashed the field into next week, on the next season rather, and And with the fourth driver is Curtis Darcy. With someone as loyal as Darcy, I don't think you can get any better than that. No, you really can't get better than Darcy for a fourth driver. But Jacques Bouvier might find this season a little rough. David Krikorian, if he doesn't pick it up, I think he's going to be out of that team. I think there's no question about that. Darcy, I don't know. He really hasn't done anything very impressive. He's had a couple impressive runs in the junior car, but in the Master Cup Series car he hasn't. And Rachel's just sort of there. Now we move on to Flash Racing, the champions from last season. Leonid Roderick, Arto Kekkonen, and Lewis Kingston for the full-time drivers. Best driver lineup in the Master Cup Series at the moment, guarantee it. Roderick, of course, he's going to be looking to defend his championship and go for 5. Now, that would put him on he'd be really closing in on some landmarks there. Arto Kekkonen, he's going to be looking for some more wins, I think, and possibly another championship contention. Of course, Arto ran away with Rookie of the Year. There's really no question about that. And then Lewis Kingston, who I think is probably the most underrated driver in the garage. Well, in the paddock, Lewis Kingston is probably, I think he's overdue for another win or two. And the part-time car is going to be shared by Scott Hamilton and you. Right, I'm going to be running that car for a couple of races, and Scott Hamilton will run it for the few others. And I think Hamilton's a very good driver. He was much maligned by the OEN in Arla. I really don't know why. But, and of course, I'm going to be running a few Arla races as well, so I'm just going to have some fun with that. And now we come to SAR USA. Oh, wait, we forgot to talk about the Inglesby Flashback M-Type. The actual Inglesby new car, what do you think of that? Well, it's They just relabeled it, basically. It's an evolution of the 2009 car, which is quite frankly awesome. And we'll have to say, I think this could be another very good year for the Inglesby guys. And now for SAR USA with the SAR Eagle. Wow. Absolutely wow. That is a very good car from the looks of it. And it has left some people saying that this team could be in a league of their own. And you have a very solid driving lineup here. Ethan Everett, who's, yes, he won on debut, but we haven't seen much else from him. Granted, he was on the 21 car, though, so we'll have to see. Drew Eisenman, who's more than willing, I think, to just sort of wait around, and he's also a very good road racer. And then Tony Durbin, and we all know that Durbin is very, very good. So we're going to have to see how they go. These three guys they work very well together, and that's one thing we've noticed, is that Everett, Eisenman, and Durbin have very good harmony together, and they could create a possibly unbeatable team. And with the fourth driver is Brian Sendak. Now that's the only question mark. Brian Sendak is not a team player, and I think everyone that knows him knows that. But the real reason I think that that the team signed Brian Sendak is because National Racing has never won Karyala before, and Brian Sendak is almost always at the front of the field at Karyala. So I think that's the real reason why Brian Sendak was signed to drive for them. And now we go back to the last couple of teams. Star Team Demoto, or rather known as Star Motorsports. Last year, there was the 52 car last year, the 52, 51, and 53 cars. Of course, Demoto now has taken over the team. So their driving lineup, you have two Japanese drivers in their full-time lineup with Yamino Tenchi and Azuma Kazuyama, and Tom Delgado as their third driver. Kendall Worthington was supposed to be a full-time driver. Lance, what happened there? Basically, in a test session, Kendall Worthington was way off the pace of Tenchi, Kazuyama, and Delgado, and so they just said, well, we'll just switch Kazuyama into the full-time ride, because Kazuyama had a CRL contract, and they basically told Kazuyama, free it up and you get the full-time ride. He freed it up, all right. He's in the Starter Moto ride. So how do you think Kazuyama's going to go? He's a bit of a question mark, I think. No one really knows how good he is, and no one knows if he might be a dud. We'll have to see, but he's going to have a shot. I think he'll be. I don't think he'll be as off the pace as people think he will, though. What about Yamino Tenchi? Yamino Tenchi is impressive, Dan. You don't just pull a car right out of the box, pull a car out of the box like that, and basically be one of the most competitive cars over the entire Decatur weekend consistently, without being very talented. Well, Chris Allen wasn't really like dominating the whole. He wasn't dominating practice sessions. He just showed up in the last couple of laps and had a go at it. Well, overall, how do you think this team's going to go? Well, Tom Delgado's got a new lease on life, it seems, and Takumi Katashima is very, very interested in keeping the cars equal. He's the same attitude as Cyril Vulpi. He's not going to give anyone preferential treatment, but actually he's treating all three drivers as if they're basically part of. They're not on three individual race teams. They're three parts of one team. You know, it has to do a lot with the Asian mentality, Dan. The reason here is that they're not so interested in individual accomplishments. They're interested in the accomplishments of the whole, and I think that's what Tom Delgado is going to like. I think he's going to thrive here, and we're going to actually, I think, see for once how good he really is. And Yamino Tenchi, I think Tenchi's going to do very well also. I do think though that Tenchi might give Delgado a run for his money as far as for the fastest driver on the team. And the very last team. Civ. Oh dear. That's all I have to say. Oh dear. They're the first Russian full-time team, and from their testing times, things aren't looking very good. No, they're not. I think this team's going to have a lot of problems just to get two cars in the field for the season opener, let alone, putting Yulia Nasova anywhere but the last row of the grid. Because Nasova's really been the only one of them that's been on the pace. And Woody Watts and Vladimir Simonov have been having some problems. And I really don't think you can put it anything better than that, Ivan Katsev is interested in seeing Nasova do better than Watts and Simonov. I really don't think you can put it down to anything other than that. Then why pick Watts? Well, because Watts has a fair amount of stock car experience and can develop this car. Vladimir Simonov is another driver they're trying to bring up, and so is Alexei Stoyanovich. And I really don't think Katsev is interested in keeping Watts for very long, but Nosova is. I think it is very obvious that there is some preferential treatment towards Nosova in this team, but seeing as this team does not have a whole lot of money, you really cannot blame them here. So they're trying to get one car to finish very, very high, so they can bag a lot of dough that they need, so that they can get the other cars further up the grid. That's the explanation for it. Do you buy it? No. Okay then. So how do you think they're going to go? This team, Dan, they have so many problems going ahead of them. For one thing, they have exhausts on the rear of the car. I really have no idea why they're doing that. And not only that, but Vladimir Simonov, I think, in testing, was spun a couple of times on at the Carbondale test. I think he spun on a warm-up lap, which I think was rather embarrassing. And it wasn't due to the fault of the driver. It was the fact that they'd had a lot of rear suspension problems with this car. So the KE01 looks like probably one of the biggest duds of all. And we are running out of time here, so we're going to have to go through some of the Independence Trophy cars really quickly. Palmer Styles, probably the favorite for the Independence Trophy, no question about it. He's probably the best driver running for it, and he's probably got the best team running for it. And the MA01 appears to be a very good car. Blitzkrieg Racing. Well, they're listed as running the MA01, but sources inside the team tell me that they're actually going to get Fortner to make their cars for them. And that could mean that Thomas Duke and Justin Brooks, who, by the way, actually completed his rehab, thankfully, will probably do quite well. We're going to have to see how Duke and Brooks go. Thomas Duke, we know, is a fairly good driver. Brooks, he really hasn't done too many impressive things. But with a teammate like Duke, he might finally feel the confidence he needs to accomplish something. The Mitchell & Sons team in the 74 car with Cyrus Laterza in for another go. Cyrus could be a dark horse. We don't know what car they're using. We think the MA01, but we're not certain on that. The Mitchell & Sons team, we're not too sure how well they're going to do. We'll have to see. FinTech. These guys are going to have a lot of problems, Dan, because Esko Kiskela and Mika Sivinen are not oval drivers, and I think they do have a couple of ovals on their schedule. So I think that this team might be a bit of an outsider for the Independence Trophy. Regardless, I would not rule them out for a couple of big results and big qualifying efforts. I wouldn't be surprised if one of these cars was on the front row for at least one race. Wow. So best qualifying positions, but no race results, basically. McDermott. Morgan Hamburg is complete rookie. I'm not too sure on him. And Craig Jansa, he hasn't really shown too much, but we're going to have to see. This team is linked with Bolden, the CRL manufacturer, so we could see Bolden make a Master Cup Series debut with J.D. McDermott. That could be interesting to see. And the Arla Cromwell is in the Master Cup Series with Ali Riggs. How's that going to go? I think that means not too well, basically. I'm just going to let that silence speak for itself. Kevin Cully Motorsports. Is this team even... Do we know anything about this team? No. Next. Team Thunder is back with Todd Wodarczyk, and I don't think Todd needs this. He needs a bit of a year to go back to the back of the grid and to really fight his way up, because I think he needs that kind of confidence. What? He needs confidence from going from fighting up? Well, the thing here, Dan, is you see, when he had a good car and he finished 30th, of course you feel like crap. But when you have a car that isn't so good, and you start like 30th, and you move up a couple spots, that's a great accomplishment. So, and not only that, but Team Thunder themselves, I think, are a very well organized group of people. They just don't necessarily have money right now. Todd Wodarczyk and Team Thunder could be dynamite. Matthias Taub and Black Diamond. If Palmer Styles is not going to win the Independence Trophy, Matthias Taub is. I can almost guarantee it. Well, that was short. Evans Motorsports with Colin Evans and Charlie Waters. Charlie Waters is going to have the better of Colin Evans, I can almost guarantee it. But then again, we haven't seen either of these cars test, so we're not too sure on how they're going to do. Well, that's all for the TM Master Cup Series Season Preview. We've gone almost 40 minutes, even though we only intended to go about 20. So, from Dan Mullen and Lance Andrews, I'll see you all at the first race of the TM Master Cup Series season.